Welcome back to Unraveled Radio. I'm your host, Miss Lovely Locks, and today we're continuing our series of Healing the Soul. It's a powerful and deeply personal episode. Joining me is Kyle Miller, the founder of Kyle Miller Coaching, with nearly 2 decades of studying personal development and a certification from the Life Coach School. Kyle has turned his pain into purpose, specializing in helping others heal from narcissistic abuse after surviving a 14-year abusive relationship and navigating toxic dynamics in dating, work, and family. Kyle now uses his experience to guide clients towards breakthrough healing without misery. And today he's here to share his journey, insight, and practical tools for reclaiming your power after emotional abuse. Kyle, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited about this.
Well, can you take us back to the beginning and what made you dive so deeply into your personal development?
So funny enough, I actually I joined a network marketing company, and it was an interesting experience. It's another experience I'm grateful that I had, although would not go back at this point in time. But that started my journey into personal development, and it's yeah, I think September of this year is 20 years that I'll have been studying, and it kind of opened up the world to me. You know, I can work on myself, I can work on my mind, I can work on my emotions, all of those things. And it kind of opens up, all kinds of other doors, to everything more in my life. And and so it was, yeah, it was really awesome. And it seems like forever ago now.
I definitely understand. I had another episode here called Healing Your Soul, and I shared it with someone. And they told me that I should mention when we're doing these traumatic life topics that I should say trigger warning because now I'm got to ask Kyle about his abusive relationship that he was in for 14 years. So if this is something that may trigger you, you may want to step away or check out another episode by Unravel Radio where we do cover many topics. So, Kyle, what was the turning point that made you say enough is enough in that relationship?
So it was really interesting because for a number of years, I believed that I didn't have any empathy or compassion, and that was, I was all on my part, where um, I was complicit in this programming that had been put into me, and so I felt for a long time that I was ruining my family's life, and that I was the problem of everything. And I believed a lot of it was because I didn't have any empathy or compassion. And I remember saying something of the sort to one of my best friends that I've known for, gosh, coming up on 30 years now, I think. And and I said something to him about it, and he said, "Well, I call effing BS on that." And that hit me like a two by four. I mean,
Wow.
it was unreal because it like it's cracked the illusion. It didn't shatter the illusion, but it cracked this illusion that I'm this terrible person that doesn't have any empathy or compassion for anyone else. And it was probably, I want to say it was probably 6 or 8 months after that I was divorced. And because I really started at that point in time, instead of looking at everything as my fault and being, something that I was causing in the relationship, I started questioning what if it's not all my fault? And
Exactly.
I certainly I wasn't innocent, I'm not I'm not playing the victim here. I certainly reacted in all kinds of unhealthy ways. And um and and that's, I think it's a huge part of moving forward in our lives is realizing, the okay, well, I could have done this different, I could have reacted to, all of the things that we can own. It doesn't mean that we have to own that we deserved the abuse, because no one certainly does. But it was a huge turning point for me to look at, all of the dynamics in the relationship, and go, okay, well, I can own this part, but this part is not something I'm owning. This is not me. I did not cause, for this to happen, no matter what it is that she says about it. And so that, it was kind of the beginning of the unraveling, and then down the rabbit hole I went. The good news is I knew what to do at that point in time, because I'd been studying personal development for so long that it's like, well, I don't really know what's going on in the relationship here, but I know what to do. I need to go get some audiobooks, get some books, watch some YouTube, just go on the research rampage, I guess, and
Right.
and figure out what is actually happening in this relationship. And um, and I believe at one point, kind of in the midst of that, I actually called the crisis hotline,
Oh,
and because I felt like I was crazy, and so I really didn't know what to do, or who to turn to, who to talk to, because so much of it was so subtle. And the way that I describe, and talk about narcissistic abuse, all of the emotional abuse, is, you have one thing that happens, and usually it's this one thing. It's like, okay, so was that abuse? And usually with emotional abuse, that one thing is not the abuse. And this other thing is not the abuse. And this other thing is not the abuse. And maybe the other thing is also not abuse. But when you put all of those together, that is what the abuse is, which
wow.
is what makes it so hard to understand and to work through, because I mean, we feel like we're crazy because we address this one issue. Okay, this one thing here. Well, you did all of these things wrong, and you shouldn't have done that, and whatever, which is a lot of times it's reactive. So they poke and they prod, and they manipulate. Maybe they gaslight us, all of
Yeah.
the things that they do, and it's just little subtle things along the way, and then we react finally at some point, due to whatever it was that was the last straw, I guess. And then it's pointed out, well, gosh, you were angry, you were yelling, maybe you broke something, any of those things that can happen. And so your behavior is pointed out, but it's very hard to pinpoint all of the little things along the way that happened that brought you to the point where you overreacted, which perhaps it's not actually overreacting, when we really look at the scope of things. And that's hard. It's hard for us to own that have gone through it, because, like, I don't want to react. I don't want to act that way. I don't want to treat people that way, no matter what they've done. But it's kind of the way that it ends up. So
I definitely understand. I've my narcissistic, and I didn't know nothing about the word or what it meant.
yeah,
Started as a child, so I have a parent that's a narcissist. So I
yeah.
tended to attract narcissists and relationships. And I have a friend that always asks me like, why do you always like give people so much leeway and like people can do you wrong and you keep forgiving them? Because this is the way I was raised. It's the way my internal wiring is. So what would you say are some of the emotional or psychological effects that survivors of narcissistic abuse often carry, even long after the relationship ends?
I think, it's so we get so used to what normal is. And so with many of us, we've had other unhealthy, toxic relationships, whether or not it was parents, friends, maybe all of the above. And and I think, it does a great thing, which is also a terrible thing at the same time, is we grow this huge capacity for dealing with what is not normal to normal, healthy people, but what's normal to us. So what we see after we've lived this life of the abuse and the manipulation and all of those things, we have a huge capacity and tolerance for a
Yes.
lot, because we had to, for survival. It wasn't like you could hold a grudge and say, "Hey, that's not okay," to your mom when you're 6, or whoever it is. So we had to learn to kind of compartmentalize all of that. Okay, well, it's not. I'm just going to let that go. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
And so when we get into other relationships, then we do the same thing. We excuse away, we let go of, we just shove it all away, so that we can function, because that's what we learned to do in survival. And I think that it's a beautiful thing in some ways once we have healed, because we have a huge emotional capacity for the turmoil and every, just all of the experiences. I know this has helped me in my coaching practice, for me to have that huge capacity, and the way I use it now is I use that to hold space. There's nothing that anyone couldn't bring me and talk about, to this point anyway, we'll say. But I can't imagine having anybody tell me something that happened and me going, oh my gosh, wow, and having that, dysregulate my nervous system much. Um, it doesn't mean that I don't have compassion for them, and it doesn't mean I won't support them, but it's not dysregulating. I think part of the reason is because I have that huge capacity for all of the, dysregulating things and everything else. I've just learned to use it in a positive way now, rather than allowing and excusing away bad behavior from toxic people.
Did you remarry?
I have not. Nope. I thought I was in a super healthy relationship, and it was perhaps not as healthy as what I would have liked. And that's really been the only real serious relationship that I've had over. It's been about 4 years since I've been divorced now. So, and lots of work, lots of coaching, lots of therapy, lots of journaling, lots of work on myself. Um,
Yes, me as
and
well.
and this relationship, this last relationship was perfect, because it exposed a lot of things in myself that, oh, okay, well, yep, I still have more work to do. Which is, it's always funny to say those things out loud too, because I coach people, I help people through all of the healing and everything, and it's like, I'm doing the work just like everybody else is. And we don't see all of the things that we need to work through and heal until we see them. And that's usually one of the things that we use to beat ourselves up with. I should have seen, I should have known, I should have done something different. Except most of the time we only have a part of the picture. We may have most of the puzzle put together of this nightmare, that we've gone through, but if we don't have all of the pieces, we can't see the whole picture. And it's very hard to really understand what's going on until you see the whole picture. And I
Yes,
think on the other side, it's wonderful. Not that it's wonderful in that moment, but when you see the whole picture, you can't not see it anymore. And I think that that's a lot of the struggle at the end of those relationships, because we've kind of mostly got the picture together and we can see what's going on. And so it feels like everything got way worse at the very end. But it's just that we could see everything more clearly at that point. And we weren't letting go and pushing away and excusing all of the bad behavior. We saw it for what it was.
I definitely understand that. What myths about healing or self-help do you often have to help your clients unlearn?
I think one of the big things is forgiving the other person,
Mm,
and I don't see that as necessary. I think it's a wonderful thing if we can get to the point where we can forgive and, let all of that go. And it doesn't mean, letting them back into our lives necessarily. Certainly not letting anyone else abuse us.
correct.
But the focus is, what I primarily focus on is forgiving yourself. Because forgiving ourselves, because we've internalized all of this shame and blame, that everything was our fault in the relationship. And it's a regular pattern that we all go through, that have gone through these types of relationships. And so forgiving ourselves is the essential thing, I think. And if you can get to a point someday at some point and forgive them, then that's great. And I also don't think that you have to in order to really heal and move forward in your life.
It's true. I was in a narcissistic marriage as well, and I forgave him. I was at an event. There's a group called the Avatar, and they did some type of work with me. They had me doing a meditation where I don't even they flip flopped it so much that it was some kind of way. It was almost like I took on it, like it was
Mm.
my fault. So I was able to forgive him. But eventually, I'm like, yeah, no, that's it's not my fault. That's not a. I'm not going along
Yeah.
with that. But it helped because we had to coexist for a few more years, and so I just wasn't as angry. And then once it got to a certain point where I saw that nothing was going to change, then I was able to let him go. And I swear, when the day I packed all his things and asked him to leave, I felt like a huge weight was lifted off of my chest, and I haven't looked back or thought twice about it. That's
Wow.
him. That's Helen.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I think that's also we question a lot of times if we did everything that we could, because it's another part of this is us not being enough. I'm sure that most of us have all been accused you're not enough. And so there's always that thought in the back of our mind, maybe I could have done more. Maybe I could have done something different or been more or whatever. And I think the benefit, not that it's a huge, but there's not the benefit in staying longer in the relationship, but I think in feeling like we gave ourselves credit for doing everything that we possibly could in order to make everything work. And then it's much easier to let go of the relationship and all of that.
I definitely understand it. If there's anyone listening that's in a toxic situation right now, what is the very first thing you would recommend they do?
I think getting help and support, talking to people, a lot of times people don't know what's going on in those relationships because we kind of default back like we were talking about survival
Yeah,
and so we hide or we excuse the abuse even if it's just emotional abuse and I think one of the reasons that we do that is because we can't even explain exactly what it is that's happening because we don't understand. We can feel something's wrong, but we can't really quite articulate it to ourselves, which makes it very hard to articulate it to anyone else. This is the abuse that's happening, this is what's going on, and I don't know what to do, I need to get out. And so it's very hard for us to talk to somebody else about it, unless we can understand. And most of the time when we're in the middle of it, we can't quite put all the pieces together about what's happening. So I think finding people that can actually understand, and it's one of the things with finding coaches or therapists or groups or anything else. Um, be ready to just move on and go find someone else. You know,
Ex-
I it's not, if they don't understand, if they're not supportive. I mean, one of the things that I was told when I first reached out and tried to get help was, gosh, I mean, I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding and you need to go talk to your wife. You just need to sit down and have a conversation with your wife.
Wow.
And I've heard a lot of people that have had that very same, similar experience. And if someone tells you that, then don't defend, don't do anything other than go find somebody else
Exactly.
because they're
No, it's
not ready to listen.
exact as we're talking, it's making me think about like, you know, exactly what you said. I've had multiple abusive relationships, but no one knew what I was going through until the relationship was over because I didn't want to look stupid. If I'm gonna still be with you, what I'm telling everybody our business for. And so I have a family member that's going through something with their mate, and they're always calling me trying to, like, tell me. And I'm like, I just don't have the capacity to listen to that. And then you still want me to be cordial with this person. So it's best you keep it to yourself. But I was thinking, like, there should be some type of tool or aid from a family member's perspective that we could give to people that we see are in those type of
Mm.
environments because they can't see it for themselves. They'll pour
Yeah,
their hearts out to you, telling you everything this person is doing bad, and then when you get mad, they get mad at you for getting mad. Like, so,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think I will offer that I haven't used this a lot, but I've heard more and more people talking about, taking the conversation, especially if it's a text conversation, take the conversation and put it into Chat GPT,
Hmm.
or any of the other AI, and or type up what the conversation was, what, as much as you can remember, and put that into one of these AI. If you don't have anybody else to talk to, you can't find somebody else. I mean, just pull it up on your phone and punch it in, and it's,
Man.
you
Well,
know,
you can also use my journals that I sell. Like, go
yeah,
buy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Journaling it out is really great too, for sure.
So, what has healing taught you about love, self-worth, and trust?
Hmm. I think um, I think that the more healing work that I've done, the more I realize, I think it's been 2 years, and I thought at that point that I really finally loved myself, and I think that there was some truth in that, but I think that more so, I finally didn't hate myself, and and so I and the funny thing is, the more awareness, a lot of the healing work, it's a lot of work on increasing our awareness, of what's inside our minds, inside our emotions, our bodies, all of those things. And so I think it feels, really loving yourself feels very different than what I would have ever expected. um, and I also know that it's a continual journey. I mean, we're humans, we're flawed, we do things, we say things. And so it's learning to let go of those things and have more compassion for yourself. And I think one of the things too, and I don't remember who said this, but it's like we should be embarrassed of the past versions of ourselves. Um, not that I not that I think we really should be embarrassed of that. It just shows that we've grown so much, that,
Evolving.
yeah, that we're evolving. So oh my gosh, I can't believe that I said that 10 years ago, or whatever it is, yeah. And it's like, okay, now I can, and it's work. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's like, wow, okay, instead of beating myself up, put the stick down. We don't need to beat ourselves up for it. It's fine, but looking back and going, wow, I'm so grateful that I'm not that person anymore. I'm more me. There's more compassion, and I can be grateful that I'm not there anymore, rather than beating myself up for the things that I've done in the past.
Exactly. What is your coaching style? Are you doing like one-on-one sessions, or do you have a
Yeah.
social media platform?
Yeah, so my sessions are one-on-one. I've worked with couples a little bit, but it's primarily just one-on-one. And it's very much, kind of like our conversation today. It's a real casual, conversation, and I just, I listen to them, and then I break in and interrupt them, probably far more often, because it's like, oh, that thing that you just said right there, that thing. Let's look at that. And so it's a very intuitive way of coaching, and I almost hate to use that word because I know it's been kind of misused and used up all over the internet, but that's really, that really is the way that I coach.
I
Uh,
love intuition. I think, and
yeah,
this whole podcast came by way of intuition.
yeah,
So, and I feel like even as I'm talking to you, I'm feeling in my spirit that like this is my purpose. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And
mm,
so everything you're telling me and the things we've been through in our past, it leads us to right here
yeah,
where we're supposed to be, and we can help other people not have to go through that same torment and
yeah,
uh not having self-love or self-worth. And it's
yeah,
a lot of steps, but I feel like the journey is continuous. You have
Mm.
you could be a PhD, you still haven't arrived. You still be healing.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. I strive every day to be the kind of person that I wish that I would have had when I was going through all of this.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thought process. So where can people find your work and will you send me links and things to put with the episode for them to
Yeah,
get in contact with you?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. The best place, KyleMillerCoaching.com, and
Okay.
and you can schedule a free consultation through there. Happy to talk to anyone, everyone, and then I'm Kyle Miller Coaching on pretty much all the social media platforms as well.
Okay, that's wonderful. We definitely have to get those links and have them added to the show. If there's anything new on the horizon for you, you want to tell us about, feel free.
Awesome. I'm just putting out lots of content, hoping to, really help people. I realize that not everyone has the funds available or the time or whatever to be able to hire a coach. And so I put out a lot of content to try and help everyone along the way, whether they work with me or not. And
That's wonderful. You know,
yeah,
because you can be scrolling the internet and find inspiration that'll change your life. But uh, Kyle has to eat too, so if
yep,
you're
it's true.
financially able, make sure you support. And I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, and I'm happy that you were on the show with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been great, Kyle, and you have a wonderful evening. Peace and
Thanks.
love. This has been Unraveled Radio. Healing Your Soul Part 5. Didn't even know I was going to do this, but this is on a more structural program. So if you are having issues and you need help, reach out to Kyle's coaching and a link will be at the bottom. You guys have a wonderful day.